Hello. This is a little voiceover, and I realized that my mic keeps cutting in and out. I'd really appreciate you if you just bear with me, as me not knowing that my mic cuts in and out, and then there's probably some things that I just like left under context or whatever. Please bear with me. Thank you so much for watching this. Still, thank you so much. All right, enjoy. Hello. So my name is Olive. Welcome to OlivieTree. This is my channel. Just kind of just do whatever. Today, I am. So first things first. Um, this is my first time into getting into comics. I was always a big DC and Marvel and anything superhero adjacent fan. I will watch the MCU movies, the TV shows, and all that. I will play the games. I'll watch gameplays of the games itself. Yeah, I watch movies. I watch TV shows. I even watch like people like Comic Historian and Comic History just to understand context about comics and all that. Um, Hold on, I'm not picking up. God, I had to increase the gain a little bit. I hope you guys' ears are not you know mashing you guys' ears right now. But you guys' ears, my voice. What am I saying, man? But yeah, I never really got into to comics. I was always a big fan of just superheroes and all that stuff. Pretty big nerd, but like I never ever got myself into comics because I was always bored. Not bored. I was always broke. Always broke, and then buying issues and issues. So like growing up, it was just like it was really hard to do, and also I was never necessarily the biggest reader. I'm trying to get myself into reading. I wish this comic was actually in Fable so I can actually put this in my so I could start like my streak in Fable for the Fable ad so I could like a reading streak. But it's whatever, I got myself. And yeah, I never got into comics, but I really think that comics is probably like a really good way to understand story. Now that I'm here, getting into comics, this is my first ever run that I'm genuinely reading. It's only volume one though. I don't know if I should read volume two. If any of you guys are watching and if I get any views on this video, I really appreciate it. Um, go into comics, tell me how you feel about all that. Do you agree with my takes? You disagree, have a discussion section. I'll probably apply because this is a really small channel. Really small channel, like 0 subscribers small. So I'll definitely reply and understand. And I'll leave you hanging. But yeah, I already the funny part about it is that I already recorded this. Um but my mic wasn't plugged in because it's whatever. I just forget. I just be dumb sometimes. So like I already explained my thoughts about chapter one and then everything. But I'll already explain it again. I'll make sure that it's not big. Hopefully, first things first. Any context about it is that I heard from a YouTube video about Batman and his costume in the DCU, about like what they're gonna do in the DCU, and they talked about how Batman. We should probably see a blue Batman because Batman in the comics at least is always much more compassionate when he's wearing blue, and they want to see that in the DCU. So I always thought about like, is that really the case? So that's what I heard. I heard that Batman is when he wears blue in the comics, he's much more of a compassionate person, compassionate Batman. So that's why I chose Daylight. And I know this one is pretty iconic too. I chose the volume one as well because I don't like getting issues, buying issues. Let me just wait till the whole thing comes out. Let me just buy it in bulk. So in chapter one or issue one, uh yeah, what a good way to set the tone of everything, to introduce us, getting us to this status quo with Commissioner Gordon talking about how like he's not commissioner anymore in dialogue too, not even like a voiceover or anything, but in dialogue with the other cop. S yes, I don't know. Forgive me. I just said like nonsense. I don't know if I can show any comic panels. Oh, I don't want to get like copyright strike. Espinoza. So he's just Officer Gordon. So he's just like it really shows in the worn. the warm tone in the scene just shows like kind of not necessarily humble beginnings, but just a little bit of just like okay, this is a nice day with I guess you could say his monologue, but his discussion with the officer. But it really shows the dynamic. It really shows the status quo, and then yeah, the art is beautiful. The art is really beautiful. Action, all this stuff. The blues and purples in chapter one was great. We got this Savage person. Looks like the cops are not messing with Savage. He's the new commissioner. I know nothing about Savage either. But yeah, first time we can see Batman in action. We see Batman in action, and he fights the little people in the park. But he really goes out of his way to make sure if the teenagers are okay, and I really appreciate that from Batman. You know, because something I want to mention as well is that Gotham, this Gotham is pretty futuristic. Um, as we tell with him dealing with Damian now, which is what the third Robin, fourth Robin, right? Dick, Jason, Tim, Damian. Is that the order, right? I swear it's not LARP, guys. But yeah, this is very futuristic. This is a very futuristic Gotham, and just for the sake of discussion, I kind of just want to kind of lean into why. My thinking of it is that like just for the sake of discussion, the DC in this run, like in this world, Metropolis exists, and like all the other DC characters exist. So it's just like when we see the difference between Metropolis and Gotham, Metropolis is the city of hope, the city of future. um it's a city of hope, so it's very bright, it's very not colorful, but very futuristic. So you have something as a superhero that's protecting it, like Superman, and that represents hope. While uh while while Gotham is a city of trauma, a city of trauma, so it always stays in its path. It's very gothic and all that stuff, very emo. With that trauma, you can't move on from trauma if you don't move on with the past. So Gotham stays in the path. I like to think how that when once Batman started like opening up his superhero patrol outside of Gotham, and then he started learning and growing with everybody else in the world. I believe also Gotham as well. So I believe if this is much more future, but much more matured Batman, a much more mature Bruce, then yeah, it's not crazy to see like a very futuristic Batman. I also really love the way how they like highlight the whatchamacallit, tools and all that stuff. Shout out to Matt Fraction and Jorge Menes and Tomiyu Mori. I don't know how to say it. My fault. Yeah, they did beautiful work, and yeah, going back with really love the blues in this section, because right now I'm reading chapter two, which I'm gonna go back. I'm reading chapter two, and then I just started chapter two, and then or issue two, and then you see Damien, doing types of stuff, and then it's surrounded by red. So I really love how like because it's Damien, he's Robin. It's very the red is very potent on the page, while it's like this chapter, the blues and the purples are very potent in this one. But I love how compassionate how he is with Croc here, because I believe I don't know how comics works, so I don't know if this is the case, but like it seems to me the thesis, at least in this volume, the thesis is that people can change, and people are allowed to change. You can have your perception on somebody, but that perception of somebody can become outdated, and you always have to update that perception. And it shows well for Bruce. He's the catalyst. He represents the theme that like people can't really change. And he's a protagonist, I believe, at least the main protect at least a main character. So he's his arc is probably like, yeah, people can change. But the thing about Bruce is that like he immediately accepted that okay, this is not Croc, this is Wayland. This is Wayland, with the fact that he unmasked himself and started talking to him. Now it's just like now it's just like some person, a human being, but also like some very compassionate, like a child. With the whole Alfred speech telling Bruce how like he was just like you know, a child. How can anybody go back from that? You out of all people should know how he feels. So Bruce really just like you know he really gets into his headspace and really try to connect with him. He doesn't really fight. He doesn't really fight him. Doesn't really like do all that stuff with him. He just oh wait, this is a child that needs help. Help him. I'm be there. So I love the way that Batman helps people more ways than one. Not necessarily just beating up criminals, but I guess what you call it. It's also like talking with being there with being compassionate. Um, as that's what I was told. You know, I still don't necessarily understand the point of the flashback here. Because we started a little bit in chapter two before I get into a whole discussion with that. We start off with the flashback with Tim. Um, with we started with the continuation of flashback that started with Tim getting his car, then you know, Bruce actually being a father, probably for once, probably teaching someone how to drive a car for him, which is probably Cap, Dick, and Jason, but it's whatever. But you can see how Bruce is like he's also like a little bit like struggling here. You know, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. While Tim, he's a smart character. So you know, it's kind of just it's a little funny to see how Tim is struggling with driving a car. Like, so yeah, it's really interesting to see. I'm trying to see the point of the flashback and what significance it has. But yeah, that's all I got to say so far. Hopefully, in my second time around, I don't miss anything. You know, Commissioner Savage, Alfred just casually just like you know having his own manner, and also just being in the missions as well. Also, the lady at Arkham as well, the new doctor. So it's like you know, it's kind of like because we got a new status quo. I'm assuming we get new characters as well that helps us introduce the status quo. So that's the Espinoza officer, the doctor at Arkham, maybe Damien, maybe I don't know. Yeah, this is what a good start. Good start. It's a good start. So yeah, I'm gonna read chapter two. And yeah, okay, I am back. Um, going through chapter or issue two, and no, this was interesting. This was an interesting issue. I do kind of want to show some art because I feel like I mean, it's not like I'm getting not like I'm showing anything. You know what? Okay, okay. I'm not gonna show any art. I don't want this. I don't want this YouTube video to get boomed. Even though I'm not making money out of this, I'm just doing this. So I don't want to get boomed. But yeah. So remember how I was talking about like the whole. I actually got notes this time, so I can actually have more order, structure, thinking. Otherwise, I'll be all over the place. But yeah, I talked about the colors, about how Robin at the beginning it dealt with you know all the reds and oranges and yellow Robin colors. But you know, once we started like you know shifting the gears between Robin and Batman, it kind of just neutralizes itself. Yeah, you get the blue because you know like in the Batmobile, but it's like a lot more neutral grays and exos. So I find that pretty interesting. Starting off with the flashback, yeah. So now I kind of understand why we're getting this flashback because it goes through a theme that I'm going through, and I'm thinking that the theme of all of this is not just change, but it's also a trust. Um, so I'm thinking that the thematic question here is that um, can people change, and can people and places change? Because you know it's all about evolution. It's about life, about change. So if so, through that change, who do we trust? Do we trust the version of the past? Or do we trust the version right? Do we trust the version of the data that we know of the person, of the city, of the place, or do we trust what's right in front of us? So, do we trust in ourselves and our own logic, or do we trust with the people around us and all that stuff with the media and all that? So I'm getting like a big theme here, or themes of change and solid it's all under one big macro theme. And with Tim not necessarily being able to trust himself to drive the Batmobile, it was just seeds to Batman getting shot in the head, and now all he can do is just trust in Damian. Not Damian. It was Tim actually. I thought it was Damian because Robin, and it's like in the future, but no, it's actually Tim. So I guess we're not that far from. Plus, like, no, Damian's not that. That's interesting. So yeah, it's with Damian and trusting himself to drive the Batmobile, and I love we get this really funny like 13 gears scene that was pretty funny. I actually got a chuckle out of me. Yeah, we talk about the 13 gears, and then we're leaving the crime scene, and then Savage is actually a nice and proposing threat. He has the in his character design he has this shape language of just like big brolic person. He has the very sharp, I guess he could say, curved features, even though he's much more square, much more foundational. He has like more sharper features, or more masculine features, I guess you could. And with all that, he looks strong and he's bigger than everyone. He wears the coats. He wears something different than everyone. So you can feel his presence. You feel his presence with everybody going around him and all that. Being commissioner, and then you can tell he has an agenda here with going after Batman and Robin. And there's another thing with trust and change. Did Batman change, or did Batman change because of Robin? Now that there's Batman and Robin, I'm assuming because of the lady that we saw with this whole like scene about like, oh yeah, yeah, there's no way you can trust, no way you can trust him for the Batman and all. But even though through that change of Batman probably becoming more of a passionate person through this run, we have Savage here, and Savage is manipulating the trust of his own cops, saying like, if can anybody, people change. I with you have an old leadership in the mayor, and now that's changed into new leadership, Savage. So nobody's gonna change my policy. This is the change now. So even though we have change, can we trust you, or do we trust the past? That's pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting concept to go around. So we got, I guess Savage has some order here, because like with his imposing will, and him being a commissioner, he has his will to, and I guess you could say not necessarily this charisma, but this influence to him, that's saying, because he's a person that embodies a justice, kind of the same justice you see in One Piece. um he embodies justice, so if anybody double crosses me, then let's go, what's up. um and so he's honing in on the strict orders that you gotta go after Batman and Robin, since they're now criminals, and it looks like he planted the evidence too, as well. And it's funny too, because like, I don't know, and it's funny too, because like, even though he planted the evidence, like we all know, Batman and Robin was there regardless, because Robin was being arrested anyways. It's just like he planted the evidence to make it seem like it was Batman and Robin that seen it. And as we can see through chapter three and chapter three's cover art, yeah, a lot of things go down with framing the murder, and not even just murder, just the incident over here. So I think I'm gonna leave it off here, because I kind of just want to leave the rest of the night. So I'll probably gonna continue tomorrow, I believe. But yeah, this is actually great to think about, and I didn't want to make this a long video, so we could probably like do 2 to 3 issues slash chapters per until I'm finished with this volume, and I'll consider if I should get volume 2. If volume 2 is at my what you call is at my comic book story. But yeah, Batman Daylight. That was really cool. First 2 issues really cool. Got me thinking. Got me trying to understand. I like understanding things. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah. Um, if you want to talk about more about what I've seen, please no spoilers. Yeah, put them in the comment section. I'll see you in the next video that I talk about this or whatever video I do. Just do.